Well, good evening, Dallas Bible Church. Great to be with you again this week for another episode of Marriage Moments at Dallas Bible. And our hope and desire is to encourage you during these interesting times that we're living in, which are very interesting. They're very interesting. Many of us are quarantined in our home, and many of us have been thrust into homeschooling, not just young kids, but college kids as well. And how much fun is that? And I'm sure that your house, like our house, is conflict-free, right? No. I'm sure you're experiencing all kinds of new conflict with getting used to homeschooling your kids. And many of you wives, you're now having to homeschool your husbands. And that's a whole new dynamic. Just kidding. But anyway, I'm excited to have Jennifer here with us this evening. Jennifer and I have been married for 27 years. And we're here just to share with you how we've mastered the art of conflict. Right, Jen?
Definitely.
Definitely not, okay? It's something that we still work on and that we're still in process of learning as well in our marriage. And so we're going to talk a little bit about conflict and how to deal with conflict, especially during these interesting times that we're in. So, Jennifer, why do we have conflict?
Well, the Bible tells us this. In James 4, 1 and 2, it says, "What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within? You want something, but you don't get it." Guys, this is so true. So much of our conflict comes from wanting to get our own way. When we handle it biblically, though, conflict can bring God glory and can deepen our relationships with our spouses. Paul tells us, if possible, as far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. So how do we keep peace with our spouse?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jen. Paul also says in Ephesians chapter 4 that with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. So right there, he gives us a brief outline of how to keep peace or pursue peace with our spouse. And guys, it all starts with humility. Notice he starts and leads with humility, which then leads to gentleness, which then leads to patience. And so Paul really gives us a good blueprint right there in how to deal with conflict. Now, here's something that I want you guys to be thinking about, you and your spouse to be pondering. A couple of questions. First question is, what does it look like for you to be at peace with your spouse? The second question is, are you currently at peace with him or her? So I want you to think about those two questions. And listen, if we're not right with God, how can we be right with people? It all begins with your relationship with God. Are you at peace with God? Why or why not? So being at peace or pursuing peace with your spouse means surrendering your desire to win the battle or the war. Means surrendering your will to win the battle or the war. Paul also says in Philippians to do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but with humility, there's that word again, humility, consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. You know, I believe that many Christians struggle in their faith journey. They become stagnant spiritually because of unresolved conflict in their life. I also believe that many marriages can come to a place of being stagnant and not thriving because of unresolved conflict. Listen, you can't just sweep the conflict under the rug and hope it goes away. It will always come back. and find you. So how do we move towards peace in conflict? We have just 3 ideas that we want to share with you. Jen, how do we begin the process of moving towards peace when there's conflict?
I would say the very first thing, the most important thing to do is to pray. And in Psalms 139, it says, verses 23 and 24, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." Take a moment to stop and just pray for yourself and really ask God to examine what's going on in your heart. Why are you wanting what you're wanting? And where's the struggle coming from? And then secondly, pray for your spouse. When I pray for Brian, it's really hard to be mad at Brian. Maybe the first few minutes, but the more that you really pray and you want the best for the other person and you want to come to a resolution, God changes your heart. So I would say step 1 is pray.
Okay, great first step. Step 2, I'm going to say, is own your part of the conflict. Okay, thinking you're not part of the problem is often the problem. Okay, and so what I want to challenge you to do is think about what it's like to live on the other side of you, and maybe ask your spouse that question: what is it like to live on the other side of me? Now, be prayed up because you're going to need to dialogue about the responses that you might hear and that you might need to give. But step number 2 is own your part in the conflict. Jen, what's the third step that we can encourage folks in?
Yeah, you can't avoid it. So be specific to what the conflict is. Try to stay away from your feelings and really just get to the point of the issue. The second part of that is how you go about doing that. So be specific, get to the point, but speak truth in love. In Ephesians 4:29, I love this verse. I've had this memorized for a long time. Let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to the needs, that it may benefit those who listen. As we speak, it's so important, if we want the other person to hear us and really listen to us, speaking with love and gentleness just helps that situation so much more.
Yeah, so hey friends, as we wrap this up here this evening, remember this: conflict in marriage is normal. Okay, especially if you're together 24/7 like we are right now. It's also an opportunity, as Jen stated earlier, to bring glory to God. Okay, to grow and stretch yourself as well as grow in your relationship with your spouse. And so think about that. Think about how you can grow in your relationship with your spouse during these times. Listen, I hope you're encouraged. I hope and pray that you will take some of these thoughts, think about them, discuss them with your spouse, work on them. We're for you. We love you. And remember, sometimes you just need to turn on some music and do some dancing. See you soon.